All around the world, hundreds of thousands of people are packed into prisons that are overcrowded, dilapidated, insanitary, inhumane, and ineffective against crime. Africa is no exception. In overcrowded prisons, men, women, juveniles, first offenders, innocent people, remandees, and convicts are mixed. Here, the daily ration consists of a ladle of tow or maize paste. Sauce is rarely provided. This hosepipe is the only source of water for the whole prison. It is used as a shower by over 200 prisoners.
We are here, we have no soap, nothing. We have only water and no soap to clean ourselves. You see these spots that come on my body? We don't even know where it comes from. We just have to sort things out in our own way.
The cells are small. The courtyard too is very small. As you've seen, there are no more than 80 square meters in here. So imagine if 200 people have to walk in this courtyard. And in the cells, there is no ventilation. This is a serious problem in the cells. There are too many sick ones. In addition to the diseases, we don't have the medicines that are necessary for the care.
In addition to the appalling prison conditions, the all-too lengthy justice system is often ineffective. In some countries, 70% of prisoners are still awaiting trial.
You can stay here for at least 6 months without trial. You wait here, you don't know if they are going to sentence you or release you. If, for a petty theft, I am put to wait here for 6 months, when I leave, I won't only steal, I'll steal with a weapon.
Contrary to the general view, a large majority of prisoners are non-serious or first offenders.
If you are first offender, please raise your hand up. If you are first offender. Prisoners whose sentence lands below 1 year, raise your hands up again.
Imprisonment is therefore often ineffective. It is incapable of preventing reoffending and is detrimental to society as a whole. And yet, there are other means of punishment. Zimbabwe was one of the first countries in Africa to try and stop the never-ending spiral of imprisonment. In 1992, it decided to explore alternative sentencing options.
At that stage, we were accommodating approximately 22,500 people in our prisons. The prison capacity was approximately 16,000. So we found ourselves under a lot of pressure to find alternatives. But at that stage too, we found that the finances available for the prisons department were dwindling in real terms. So there was need for us to look at other ways of dealing with the offender in order to lessen the pressure on the prisons department. I should also mention that most importantly, there was a shift in thinking towards the way we should deal with convicted persons.
Zimbabwe then introduced community service. Davidson Mapfumo was sentenced to work a few hours per week in this school. Under a community service sentence, the offender is not sent to prison anymore. Instead, he or she is sentenced to work for free for the community to pay for the harm he or she has done.
Davidson Mapfumo, he was employed as a clerk, I think an administration clerk at Chibuku breweries. He stole $50,000 from his employer, which he was supposed to bank. And he was also a first offender, aged 30, married with, I think, one child. We felt that still he could qualify for community service.
I was quite aware that my chances of going to prison were very high. And I even mentioned that to my family, in fact my wife.
Of course, not all offenders can be sentenced to community service. A social worker, known as a community service officer, carries out social inquiries and advises the courts.
During the community service inquiry or the interview, there are certain factors that I look into which determines the suitability of an offender to be sentenced to community service. One of which must be a fixed abode. A person must have a fixed abode so that we can determine where to place him. We can also maybe be able to follow him in the case that the person is defaulted. Another factor that I have to look into is whether this person is of has some family responsibilities. We believe that if someone has some family responsibilities, is likely to perform his community service and complete it. Another factor that we also look at is whether the person is a first offender. It also depends on the motive, because some people might be forced by certain circumstances to commit crimes.
When a person is imprisoned, his family also pays the consequences. When a person is under a community service sentence, he can keep his work while living with and supporting his family.
At the beginning, I could not believe that my husband had been arrested. I spent all day and night crying. It really hurt me a lot. For me, doing community service is much better than prison, because your husband is with you, as opposed to being so far away in prison. Your heart is somewhere okay, because when your husband is away, your heart is troubled.
Kenya introduced community service in 1999. The work carried out by the offenders must be of benefit to everybody in the community. They are therefore placed to work in public institutions, schools, hospitals, children's homes, etc.
This health center is an initiative of the community. It was built in 1997 and was officially opened in the same year, 1997. We can say we are so much happy because we've received good assistance from the community service order people. This is the project we are having right now is the maternity ward construction. We are constructing a maternity ward for ladies in this region. As you can see, this land is not well off that way, and the next maternity here is over 10 kilometers away. And because we realized we are having these people and they are having good skills, for the construction, we had to look at the issue of maternity so that we can alleviate the suffering of mothers in this land.
Barabara ino nikuromberwa kuhilla kwenyanga irombwe kuhille kama
We want this road to be constructed so that we can take the goods that we've harvested to the market to sell, like cabbages and bananas.
We always have problems of transportation because there are no roads to let the vehicles come up here. At times, we had to carry our sick ones on our backs to the hospital.
Previously, we had that system ran away from the EMP, where people were not working in public projects, but on private projects or other projects which were not relevant to the people. But here in community service, they are working in such projects like afforestation, roads, working in public schools, hospitals, etc., where people can see them actually working. And those are some of the benefits we are seeing. And this is what makes appealing to the people now.
Burkina Faso, for its part, has decided to pilot a community service scheme while putting in place an appropriate legal framework. Within this scheme, the offenders have to spend half of their sentence in prison before doing community service.
Well, let's say that when the project started, as I said, I had the chance to be involved from the beginning, we were worried. Because everyone thinks a prisoner, he is trouble, especially or even if you are from the health services. We are always afraid for the others too. We were worried, but gradually we realized that it was a project that needed to be encouraged. Especially when the first ones came. They arrived at a time when we needed help in the services where we placed them.
Kombu Kellier is one of the first to benefit from community service. While in custody, he had faced serious health problems.
No one would have thought that I would recover. The community service officer, Marcel, it was him who came and prayed for me. During my illness, the others didn't want to share their food with me. But God didn't leave me.
Community service officers are in charge of placing the offenders in host institutions.
The main difficulty at the beginning was the perception of community service by the public. Because not everyone had a clear or fair idea about prison, one thinks that those who are admitted to prisons are misfits or people who need to be completely isolated. So sometimes we had problems with placement institutions to convince them to take offenders on community service. The concern at the beginning was recidivism or reoffending, but we were happily surprised to see that there was no recidivism and no offense committed in the placement institutions. So over time, placement institutions have gained confidence in the scheme.
In all countries concerned, it is absolutely essential to explain to the public what community service is all about.
Some of the main difficulties that could be faced is when one is placed on community service, the community, on seeing the offender back with them, they sometimes feel that there's something that didn't go right. So it has been a big problem for the probation officers, come community service officers, to explain to the victim exactly why this one had to be released back to the society.
Mrs. Wanyama was robbed by Felix, a young boy who was working at her house. After some time on remand detention, Felix was sentenced to do community service at the energy center in town.
Okay, I got a rumor that he had been, his jail term was over. But I wouldn't understand what he's doing around. And when I started seeing him with some of the officers, government officers around, I felt, why? Why is he having it sense? Now, there's a time I even felt like telling the man, hey, you're working with the wrong boy. But I said, let me not poke my nose into the affairs I don't know. So I just used to see him with a good example, the manager to the energy center. I said maybe they have their own deals and all that. I just kept it to myself.
When he arrived, he was doing the work as a punishment. So in the process of doing the work, he became assimilated with the work until he himself is now able to do what we were training, what we were instructing him to do. He has learned varied skills like making the jiko, which you have just seen. He has learned how to tender the tree nursery. He has learned how to make the energy saving utilities like fireless cooker. He has learned to make the solar cookers. He has learned to make solar cookbox and the general carpentry.
As far as the customers know, Felix is just a normal employee.
And even when he arrived here, the member of staff considered him as an offender, so he was always treated with suspicion. Maybe wherever somewhere, they could think maybe he could say something or he could do something criminal. But these days, the attitude is different. They now treat him as any other member of society who is good. They don't have that. That initial mentality is altered. So I'm happy about that.
L'opinion publique généralement dans nos pays et surtout dans le contexte
Public opinion in our countries, particularly these days, tend to consider that criminals should only be in prison.
Cette vision répressive qui
Repression is the widespread vision around here. Therefore, it is most important to explain that the community service does not address serious offenders. Offenders such as highwaymen, thieves, muggers, or those whose crime results in death cannot benefit from community service measures. This must be made very clear so that the people do know that community service is not about doing criminals a favor. It is about offering him or her the chance to reintegrate society and realize that living in society implies following rules, like respecting property, life, etc.
Josephine is a widow and has to bring up her 9 children by herself. In order to cope financially, she brewed illegal alcohol and then succumbed to drinking. Her children left home and settled in the streets. Eventually, she was arrested and sentenced to perform a community service order at Molo Hospital. As they were satisfied with her work, the hospital decided to employ her.
My life is going well. Even my children, who had run away, have come back. My home is better now. because I have bought some sacks of sweet corn and I have stored in my house. I also have some sacks of coal which I put in front of my house to sell in the evening after my work to earn some money to buy some vegetables and petrol. I find my life better now than before when I was selling alcohol.
This fits well into our own traditional life. We did not have prisons before the white people came. Offenders were usually punished by making them dig a hole or cut trees around the chief's house or any public place. And so the introduction of this service fits well into our societies here.
If community service fits well into African societies, it is also because it relies on existing structures and is based on a model that is both simple and cost-effective.
You see, the beauty about this program is that it responds directly to the challenge of overcrowding in the prisons. And for developing countries where funding is a real issue, the question is, can we continue to send people to prisons that have become death holes? This particular program, the community service program, is a real option. It's less expensive to government. It relies very heavily on the community on the outside, and it pulls the community into the rehabilitation of prisoners, which has never been the case with other forms of punishment, which predominantly incarceration of the offender. And also another key component of this program is that it allows the victim to get some benefit from the service that's being provided by the offender. Whereas imprisonment, the victim is made to pay for the offender's upkeep while they are in prison.
Within a few years, the introduction of community service has become a priority for a growing number of African countries. This also corresponds to a change at the political level.
Prisons create criminals out of people who are otherwise good. They've made a mistake. I have not bid for funds from Treasury to build more prisons. I've said I will be content with what we have and decongest them by way of community service and other penal reforms which can come into place in Zimbabwe. And the politicians are well behind me on that particular area, so that we have, people not in jail but out of jail. At the same time, making reparations for the bad they've done or the harm they've done to society.
I was a magistrate, and I remember at that stage I used to believe in, really draconian sentences. I believed that if you dealt with criminals, if you imposed heavy penalties, you'd eradicate crime. That's what I believed then. But of course I was wrong. I remember in I think 1989, we visited just about every prison in Zimbabwe with the minister and the attorney general. And it was at that stage that I think the reality of the situation in our prisons dawned upon most of us.
Community service is not the sole alternative to imprisonment, but within a few years it has proven its effectiveness. In Zimbabwe, 50,000 people have been placed on community service. Reoffending is almost inexistent, less than 0.2% according to reports from the police. 126,000 people have been sentenced to do community service in Kenya within less than 3 years. 95% of them have successfully completed their order. The cost of a community service order is 6 times lower than that of imprisonment.
Jaranatiye Amia Camporoyo Amia Jaranatiye Amia Camporoyo Songa duduone Abanji bawiya bilana Songo duduone Abanji sawiya bilana Songo duduone Abanji kaporo bilana Songo duduone Abanji sawiya bilana Adi mama yanda